Hi, and welcome to today's Lightning Connect webinar. We'll teach you to integrate data lightning fast. So I'm Pat Patterson. I'm a developer evangelist here at Salesforce, working on the Salesforce platform, and I actually specialize in identity and integration. So this has been a really interesting technology for me to work on. I'm joined this morning by Jason Choi. Jason, why don't you explain what you do at Salesforce?
Sure, thanks, Pat. Hi, my name is Jason Choi. I'm part of the product management organizations at Salesforce, primarily responsible for integration products.
Okay, so Lightning Connect is your baby.
Absolutely.
Okay, so how we're going to run this morning, we'll give you an overview of the Lightning Connect technology, and then we'll have a quick look at the OData protocol that forms the basis of its integration. Jason will give you a demo of Lightning Connect in action, and then we'll talk about the features and the roadmap for new features becoming available. And we'll round off with a look at one of those new features that will be available in the Summer 15 release, the Apex Connector library, before going on to your Q&A. And talking of Q&A, if you do have questions, no need to wait until the end. You can post your question, as it comes to mind. We're going to try in this one posting to the success community. So please log in there and look for the official Lightning Connect group. And the benefit of posting there is that your questions and answers get archived for everybody else to see. A bit of Q&A etiquette. Please don't repeat questions. We kind of queue them up and we'll get to them as we do. We do have people answering questions live as Jason and I are talking, and then we'll come around and pick some out for the Q&A at the end. And if you've ever been on a Salesforce webinar before, you'll be very familiar with our safe harbor slide. We will be talking about future roadmap, making forward-looking statements. Please don't make any purchases of stock or products based on anything Jason or I say today. Please use our publicly disclosed information on the website. So with that, Jason, why don't you give us the high-level view of Lightning Connect?
Sure. So first of all, I am sure that a lot of audience is wondering what is Lightning Connect. So basically, it's an integration feature that we introduced in our last release in November 2014. It's an add-on feature, but you can also access it with a Salesforce Developer Edition because it's automatically enabled in there. So basically, it's an integration capability, allow you to set it up by simply mouse point and click, allows you to be able to access the external data in real time without the need to copying or storing the data locally at Salesforce, right? So you'll be able to do that. And then with Lightning Connect, we will allow our customers be able to access the back office data, storing outside of Salesforce in the quickest manner and with the maximum productivity.
So that is actually an important point there. We're not storing data. It's not at rest in Salesforce at all. We're just kind of reading it into memory. And that has a couple of effects, right? We don't consume any storage in your org, and some of those data residency concerns, some regulated industries, you might not be allowed to store that data elsewhere, but you can still access it and view it within Salesforce, right?
Correct. So that's the beauty of this solution, because we are accessing the data by reference. That means we will not need to store the data. That means your storage quota will not get consumed. And at the same time, for certain industrial verticals or in companies in certain regions, they could keep the data within their boundary without the need to keeping it elsewhere.
Very cool.
So let's get down to the details on how exactly Lightning Connect work in this case. So first of all, with Lightning Connect, the Salesforce server is going to make real-time web services call-outs over the internet to reach the data source endpoints. So the data request is on demand basis. We are not going to request or copy the entire data set into Salesforce. We will be running queries against the external data. You could have millions of rows of data in your database, but every time you have access to it, we'll be only making a query to a small subset of the data. And the request is always in real time. That means your user will always have the confidence that whatever they're going to see on the Salesforce side will be the actual reflection of the data being stored in the back office system. I think back earlier you mentioned that the data access by reference, meaning that when we retrieve the data into Salesforce, we actually will put the data into the server memory. We're not going to put it elsewhere. We're not going to storing it. We're not going to put it in the file system or database. So the data will be only live in the server memory during the duration of the processing of the data. And when you change your user context, for example, change to different tabs or go to a different area, the data will be discarded from the memory. So there will not be any residuals or storage footprints on the Salesforce side. When we retrieve the data into Salesforce memory, actually we take one more step. That is, we're going to format all those external data into our Salesforce object representation. Well, the significance of that is you could have a flat database table somewhere, it could be from Oracle, SQL Server, or MySQL sitting outside. When we fetch the records from those data sources into Salesforce, those will become manifest as a Salesforce object where you can apply many of the high-level Salesforce operations directly against those objects without the need to parsing or pre-processing the data. You could have a list view. You can have you can run the Apex. You can write Apex code or Visualforce page against those objects as if they're just part of the Salesforce object family.
Very cool, and we'll see that actually in just a few minutes.
And last but not least, we choose using a industrial open standard for accessing the data. Right, this is the wire protocol called Open Data Protocol that we're using to access the data. What that means is that we allow our customers and our partners to quickly build solutions, so using the open source libraries with open spec, or maybe finding solutions from other partners.
Excellent.
So
there's a whole bunch of data sources that we support, and everything revolves around this OData protocol, right?
Yes. So as I mentioned earlier, for Salesforce, you choose a wire protocol to communicate with the external data sources. We choose a industrial open standard, and that's what we refer to as the Open Data or OData protocol. And today, there's plenty of commercial packages providing the OData feed or the OData interface out of the box, right? Some of them from SAP, Microsoft, IBM. Or for developers that have the mindset of develop their own, there's plenty of libraries in the .NET, Java, PHP space allow you to build your own data providers that will be able to providing an OData feed. For some other customer that they might want to have a out-of-box solutions, they can also come to one of our many integration partners to get a middleware solution where they allow them to republish the data in the OData format.
And this is actually quite important to understand. We make a call out from the platform to an endpoint across the internet, and if you can't or don't want to actually put your actual data source out on an endpoint, these partners can be useful in connecting across that last mile, right?
That's spot on, right? The two reasons for our customer to using one of these partners is, one, they would like to be able to publish the internal data behind the firewall to a internet-facing place, which is where Lightning Connect will be able to access to.
Effectively a proxy.
Correct. And the other one is that, well, the format for the data will be in OData format so that they can alleviate the complexity of converting the data feed into OData interface. So those are the two main reasons why some of our customers consider using this kind of middleware solutions.
All right. So we've talked about OData quite a lot. Before we actually go into a demo of Lightning Connect itself, why don't I give the developers on the call just a little look under the covers at what's going on and the communication between the Salesforce platform and these data sources. So let's take a quick look at the Open Data Protocol, or OData for short. Now, it's a standardized protocol very much oriented around data. It's effectively used for exposing row-column database format data. And the nice thing about it is it uses familiar protocols like HTTP, and it's pretty much a RESTful API. And we actually get a lot of functionality from it. And understanding a little bit about what's going over the covers, will let you understand how efficiently we can work with external data sources. So the protocol itself was proposed by Microsoft quite a little while ago, about 2009. Microsoft took it to the OASIS standards body, and it's been standardized for a couple of years now, and it's actually the current version is version 4, although in the product at the moment, in Lightning Connect at the moment, we support version 2. We'll talk a little bit about those versions when we talk about roadmap in a little while. And the OData protocol, being a RESTful protocol, it really is built around the concept of URIs for resource identity. This is how we pin down what we're talking about. So I've broken out the URI onto 3 lines here. The first line is the service route. So it'll typically be HTTP or HTTPS. There'll be some host and some service path. So that might be, my SAP server / order database. And then the next segment on the end of the path is a table identifier. This identifies the entity that we're talking about. So here we're talking about products. So there might be some product table in our external data source. And just as an illustration of the fact that we actually pass through queries across the protocol, here we're querying the product table for products with a rating of 3, and we only want the rating and name columns from the database. So we can actually optimize the data flowing over the wire within the protocol. There's a couple of different representations on the wire of data. The one on the left is obviously XML. It's the atom flavor of XML, and that really, comes from OData's roots back in the last decade. But now in the more recent versions, it's actually switched to JSON by default. And as you can see, you actually get a very clean JSON representation of data that's very, very easy to work with from a variety of languages. So let's have a look at what you might get over the wire. And I actually cooked these up using curl against some sample OData services. So if I just go and get the service route document, I get quite a lot of information. I get a reference to where I can find some metadata, and I get the list of entity sets or tables that are available at that data source. Now, unfortunately, the metadata is still XML only, but it actually gives us the ability to look into that data source and pull out schema. So here I can see that the product table has an identifier that's a 32-bit integer, and it's got a name, and it's got a bunch of other fields. And this is what allows us in Salesforce, in the platform, to bring that schema in and really give a seamless integration. So here's our query. We query for products with a rating of 3, and as I said, we get back very clean JSON. We get back just exactly what we asked for. Here, milk is the first product with a rating of 3, and we get just that rating and name columns. We can get all the information for a particular entity. So this is like a retrieve operation. And here, we use that same URL, locating the products set, and we pass a key in brackets. So this is ID number 1, which again is the milk record, but here we get all the columns that are available. We can update over the protocol. So and again, it's a pretty developer-friendly RESTful API, because I can just update via curl. I can just send some JSON identifying what it is I want to update and post that a price change into the milk entity in the products table. And finally, something we'll talk about in roadmap in particular, I can even track changes in that external data source. So say I want to know when new products are added, I can give that external data source a callback URL where it can tell me as updates and inserts occur on that table. So it's a very powerful protocol that we're leveraging here, and we get a lot of value, as you'll see in well, just a couple of seconds, because Jason, you're gonna show it to us now.
Sure. Thanks, Pat, for the demo on the OData side. I think for those of folks on the call, one of the easy examples to explain OData is you can think of it just like ODBC over HTTP, allowing you the full CRUD access to the database. And the other powerfulness of using this solution, because it's based on HTTP, it's an open standard. You can using a browser or just like what you did, Pat, with curl to be able to introspect your data source, right? Making sure that making sure that the format being published is to the open standard. So that's how easy you will be able to using this to debug your services.
But the really nice thing about Lightning Connect is, in fact, you don't even need to know all of that stuff is going on, because you just paste in that URL, right?
Exactly. So I'm going to switch gear to show a quick demo in terms of how one would be able to set up Lightning Connect quickly by simply mouse point and click. So as you can see, I'm a Salesforce admin for a company, Salesforce org, right? I have my typical information low for my customers, information on Salesforce, where accounts, contacts, opportunities, and I have my order database stored somewhere else in my back office. So what I'm going to do next to show how easy you can using Lightning Connect to be able to fetch those back office data in real time into Salesforce. To set up Lightning Connect, it's very straightforward. You go to the setup menu, under the develop, when you have the Lightning Connect feature, you can see there's additional menu items coming up. One of them is called external data source. External data source, what that translates into is the endpoint for the external data services. So I'm going to go ahead to add a new external data source, give it a name. I can call it back office. And then, as Pat mentioning, the protocol we currently support is the OData 2.0. That's why I'm going to select that. Then the rest is just providing the endpoint, the URI, right? The URL for the data services. There's some other additional parameters you can change and tweak for the user experiences. You can also have different kinds of combination of identity mappings, ranging from anonymous to a single functional or system account for access, or you can even have each user to provide their own credential to access the data source. And with that, you can also select whether it's OAuth 2 or using the HTTP basic, right, for the authentications. For the demo purposes, and let me stay with the anonymous. So those are the quick steps. You set up a data source endpoint. So as you can see, I have this data source endpoint set up called back office. And the next step for admin to do is click on this button called validate and sync. When I click on that, what's happening behind the scene is the Salesforce server is going to reaching out to the data source endpoint, introspect the service root URI, asking for what kind of database tables being published on the remote side. As you can see, we have 6 database tables from categories, orders, payments, a set of database tables being published. For the sake of the demo, I'm really interested in the order details and orders. Those are the 2 database tables I'm interested to be displayed on the Salesforce side. So I'm going to select those 2 and click on this button, Sync. Sync is not about syncing the data. When I click on Sync, what's happening behind the scenes, Salesforce is going to look at the metadata on the remote information system, and using those metadata to construct a container. We call it external objects on our side. Think about it as more like the data structure that we are going to use to format the data. So if you click on one of these container, we have the name for it called external objects. This is similar to the custom objects, but we have a different name for it. So we click on one of these guys, let's say order details. For those developers on the phone, you can probably see this is very similar to what you will see as a custom object. You can see all these fields and layouts. And if you notice, there's a set of custom fields being created programmatically for you without any human intervention, because when we introspecting the remote metadata, we're using those metadata to build all these columns for you. And you can even drive this the actions against this external objects using APIs, right? As you can see, there's an API name for it with the _x as a suffix, so indicating this is the API to driving a external object where the data is being stored externally. So other than the fact that the the difference between external objects and the custom object is external object do not store the data, where custom objects we have the data locally in Salesforce. Other than that, pretty much you would be able to operate against external objects as if it is a Salesforce custom objects. So for example, I would be able to go ahead to create a custom tab for an object, right? So I'm going to go ahead to create a tab, right? I'm going to select, say, well, I would like to add a tab for, maybe we'll start with orders first. I can put in select a style for it, right? Maybe this order is for cars, right? So the rest is just typical Salesforce operation. As you can see, that's what you would do typically to create tabs, selecting the apps where this tab is going to be belonging to.
We want orders everywhere.
Exactly. So when you're done, if you can see there's a new tab being added to our menu bar on the headers here. When you click on it, and we can even go to see initial sneak preview, right? You can see a bunch of data popping up here within a second, right? So just remind you, Pat, none of this data is being stored in Salesforce. All the data item you're seeing here is being fetched in real time from the external system. I can even go ahead to make it look a little bit prettier, so I can add in some more meaningful columns and I hit save. So you can see there's a list view of all the external data being displayed.
And I counted that as about 4 minutes from when you started setting up to seeing that external data within Salesforce. But we can do more, right?
Yeah, absolutely, right. So this is the list view. You can go into a specific data items, right? For the first order here, you can look at the fields. Remember, Pat, I was mentioning because we're accessing the data by reference, that means none of the data is being stored on the Salesforce side. The list of data items, the records you just saw on screen, after I click on this specific order, those items will be dismissed from the memory. The only things in memory is this particular records. So another powerfulness, I think, as we mentioned earlier, when we format the data, external data into a Salesforce object representation, that means that we would be able to establish sophisticated relational model within the external objects or between the external objects and internal objects. So for example, for this orders here, you can see we have a specific order ID. That happen to be related to the order ID in our order details objects. So I would be able to go ahead, for example, look at my order details external object itself, because it happens to also have this field called the order ID. I can go ahead to make some changes to this field because when we first pull it in from the metadata, it's coming in as a text field or numeric field because we don't know what that is. But now that we know that it could be setting up a lookup relationship, so I'm going to go ahead to change this from a numerical field type to a external lookup relationship type.
Okay, so we're modeling the relationships that exist in that external database.
Exactly.
Right here in Salesforce.
So you can just change the type, select which object is this order details related to. So obviously, my order details related to the orders. I'm going to go to next, and then giving it the field length, right, the typical Salesforce operation that you've been doing many times. Then we also support all the user profile access. We honor all those, so you can select which user group will be able to have access to this, and then click through the steps. And click Save.
Okay, so let's see the difference.
So when I do that, when I'm going back to the same orders that we were looking at earlier, right? So click on that. As you can see, the order details being pop up, right, as related items for this particular order header. So for the same token, I can go back there to make it a little bit prettier, because I think URL is something that not many of our business users will make sense out of it. So we can go ahead to remove the URL and then putting in a bit more meaningful business data into our columns here.
All right. So this is just standard Salesforce.
Exactly. This is how you can customize the look and feel. You can editing your layouts or adding buttons to it. So as you can see, Pat, right, you will be able to see from the orders, which is the external objects. Now you have the children, right, which is all the ordered line items being show up by default as a related items here.
So how do I relate this back to my Salesforce data?
That's a great question. Because the same process I'm doing among the external objects, I will be able to do it against the internal Salesforce data. For example, I know that there's an ID called customer ID that happen to map to my account IDs on the Salesforce account object side. So what I'm going to do, I will be able to go back to say to the sales order object itself, doing the same process, modify the field layouts, right? The custom fields, changing the field of customer ID, which is coming back again as a numerical type initially. I'm going to change that to a lookup type. So I'm going to make it an indirect lookups. So I probably want to spend 30 seconds on this. So there's different kind of lookups that we support. We support the direct lookups that's between Salesforce objects, and external lookups where you have external data you would like to be able to establish the connections. But for certain types of objects that we don't have a primary key for the lookup, indirect lookup is one way to allow you to using a non-primary key as the foreign key lookup relationship. So that's what we're going to do.
All right.
So I'm going to select the indirect lookups. Go ahead to select which object is this items related to. So account objects on the Salesforce side is what the order is related to. And then we'll go ahead to even select which field is the candidate key field for this. So we have the foreign key and then the candidate key.
So this is a custom field on my account object that's got those same customer IDs as the external data source has.
Correct. And that's what we're using it for the linkage between the external objects as well as the internal objects. And then the rest is pretty straightforward, as you have seen it earlier. You can select which field, which user profile that you want to grant the access to the users. And then pretty much that's what I did. Click Save. Now that when I'm going back to the account object itself, let's say pick the first account, and scroll down further, we can see towards the end, I have all these orders being popping up as a related item. Again, I mean, I can go ahead to make it a bit more meaningful for the business users. Change the field type. This is the typical exercise I have done it earlier, Pat, which is you can change the field type, removing some of this, and then we'll get the more meaningful data here. I can even check it to a little bit of the top of the layout, so we can see it sooner. We don't need to scroll down that much. I can check it. As you can see, this is how powerful this solution, because it just operates like a Salesforce object, so you can do all those wonderful things, change the layouts, or even build your own Visualforce pages to make it a really nice presentation to your user. So you can scroll down, you can see the orders being shown up by default without any single line of coding I've done, right? As related items.
And then we can click through one of these and just get right down into drill down into those order details.
Exactly.
Just like
back
that.
To the same page.
Wow,
yes.
Very cool.
So that's hopefully that gives you an idea on how easy and how quickly you can set up the solutions with the Lightning Connect.
All right, and so we saw there that in very many ways, Lightning external objects are just like custom objects. We saw tab there, we saw list view, we saw the detail pages. We didn't look at chatter feeds, but you could even collaborate around these external records.
Yes, you would be able to run the standard Salesforce like search languages or query languages against it. So stock code and it's also supported. You can hook a chatter feed, like you said, right, Pat? You can have a chatter feed against the external object, so your internal worker can collaborate against the external data. Whatever you set up on the desktop side actually will show up automatically without any additional steps on the Salesforce1 mobile platform, so that your business user will be able to access it from their iOS and Android devices. And
the one thing to remember, if you're going across APIs and using these in Apex, the only thing you really need to remember is that _X instead of _C.
Yes, correct. I think that's a good point, that because the data is being stored externally. That's why we have the _X. We do have some limitation in terms of what you can and cannot do with the external objects today. So, for example, today when we go to GA release in last November, the external object itself is read-only, but we're working on the writable one. It is currently in pilot. So by middle or later part of this year, we will be able to make all the external objects writable, so you can read to it. You can even update, deleting, or creating the external data using Lightning Connect. We will be also supporting the reports. Right, today you wouldn't be able to run the custom report type against external objects, but we will be supporting it towards the end of the year. Some other areas, for example, the formula fields, triggers, workflows, and some of the field checkings, those are the items that we're currently working on, and that's related to the current limitation of the OData 2.0's protocol that we're using, which is we're going to work on it in the later part of this year. So as you can see, there are some limitations with the external objects that we are working to remove most of this, and you actually can find all this information in the online help document as well.
Right, and you know, a good rule of thumb here is that anything that depends on a notification from the external data source of some change, so triggers, workflows, approvals, all of those things, they'll be coming later on.
Exactly. The reason is because when we have the external data, from a Salesforce perspective, it's difficult. We won't have a way to be able to know if the data has been changed on the external system. That's why we're relying on some other more sophisticated mechanism to get the notifications.
So tell us about what's coming down the line then.
Sure. As you can see on the roadmap, from a roadmap perspective, we're currently working on a couple nice features that's currently in pilot, but we're moving into GA in a couple of months. The first one is a real-time access to the data storing in different Salesforce org, because for some of our larger customers, they could have multiple Salesforce org where sometimes they want to share data among them, but they don't want to copy or syncing the data back and forth. And we're going to extend Lightning Connect to not only accessing external data, we allow our customer to be able to accessing the data storing in a different Salesforce org without the need to copy or syncing data. So that's what we call the real-time cross-org data access. The other one is what we call Apex Connector Library, where we allow our customer to build their own custom connectors, and that feature is also going to GA in the coming months. And some other features is writable capability for external objects. Also currently in pilot, we're going to GA later this year. OData 4.0 will be supported, and custom reports also will be supported towards the end of the year. I think because we have mainly a lot of developers on the call here, probably takes more for to take a minute to talk a little bit more about this Apex Connector Library. Right. What we call the Apex Connector framework is because, as I mentioned, Lightning Connect solely relying on OData 2.0 as the wire protocol for communication. But from time to time, our developers will have the need, or our customers might have their own needs to using their own protocol or their own proprietary standard. So that's why we're providing an Apex library to allow our customer to develop their own connectors to plug into a Lightning Connect framework so that they can bring in the data in their own proprietary protocol or their own format, but that can be plugged into our data virtualization framework so that it will service as an external object where you can enjoy all the benefits of the Salesforce entity capabilities. I think, Pat, you have some early experiences with this Lightning Connect adaptive framework. So just show it and share with the audience.
Sure, yeah. So what I did was Jason added my developer org to the pilot, and I was able to get some early experience in this. So writing an Apex connector, it's pretty straightforward. There's a framework to follow. There's a couple of classes that you'll need to start with. Now, the first is called the provider. So your provider class extends this data source.provider class, and really you're telling the platform about what your data source can do. So in particular, I want to tell it how the admin or the user can authenticate to the provider. In this case, it's just a sample, so it's anonymous. I don't really care. But here I could say perhaps that it's named principal access. There's a single like integration account that has to be used for this data source, or I might even have per user access to kind of pass through permissions from Salesforce users into the external data source. Now, the other method I have to support is this get capabilities, and this tells the platform here in this case that I can support search queries. So the platform is going to pass through search requests, and I've presumably got some way of implementing that in against my data source. And this row query allows me to do satisfy SOQL requests. And the last thing that my provider needs to do is to pass back a data source connection of the right type. So what I'm doing here is just passing back my new sample data source connection. So this is really oriented around the very high level configuration, what you see in that first step of configuring a data source. Where we get down into connection, we're kind of going one level deeper. So here is where I get to express my schema. So when you hit that validate and sync button, this method gets called, and here I'm just creating a single table. Well, I'm not creating a table. I'm passing back schema for a single table, and I've got 6 columns here of various types, text, number, Boolean, and so on. And I'm saying, okay, I've got a table. It's called sample. Title is going to be the name field, and here are my columns. So this just lets me express to the system the shape of my data source. And from there on, it can be very simple. What I've done, since this is just sample code, is I'm using a bunch of helper functions to satisfy queries. So this query method gets past the query context, which has what filters the user's asked for, any sorting options, any limits. Maybe I just want the first 25 rows from my data source. And I'm just using these data source query utils to apply those against some set of rows. So I'm being pretty lazy here, just generating the same set of 50 rows, no matter what the query, and I'm just letting the platform filter and sort and then apply limits and then finally return those to the rest of the system. And the other thing to look at here is if I just go down to get rows, this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where you typically at least have to call out to some external system. Here, just for simplicity, I don't want to clog it up with HTTP requests and so on. I'm just generating sample dummy data. But you would really call out here, maybe pass through query parameters, limits, and whatever. I think there's an example in the documentation that shows queries against one of the Google APIs. But again, here I'm just returning some simple data, and I'm actually making some random text in the summary field, just so that we can see how dynamic the system is. So just a few methods. Let's see it in operation. So I'll just go straight into my sample page. And again, this is just pulling it in real time. So if I go to see all my records, I've got Latin text being generated at random. And if I go into, say, this first record here, what I should be able to see is if I refresh Control R on Windows, you'll see the summary actually change as it pulls another record across the wire. So just very, very simple code just to illustrate a custom external object using the Apex connector library, and the fact that it is really real time. Every single time it's requested, you're getting fresh data there. So lots of fun, and it took me about 2 hours from beginning to end to get that working. So very very straightforward to use.
In fact, I think one thing I want to point out is that because this Apex connector framework will be part of Lightning Connect SKU, that means it will be available in our developer edition orgs. So in a few months, for those of you interested in trying this out, you will have the same capability in your DE orgs. You can do exactly what Pat's been doing in the last couple of minutes. You can build your own connectors. Feel free to try it out, and then doing some more innovation out of it.
And in fact, that was a vanilla DE org with the pilot provisioned into it, but from I think it's a week or two, we'll be doing the pre-release, and those summer 15 orgs will give you that capability, right? That
Correct,
Apex
yes.
connector library. So yeah, you only have to wait, I think, a week or two. Okay, so we're kind of getting towards the end of the content, and I hope there's some good questions been coming in. Looking at the other machine, there's some There's some great questions coming in from the community. To find out more about Lightning Connect and all of the Lightning technologies, you can go to our developer page, developer.salesforce.com/lightning, and there's a tutorial that you can run through in a developer edition org to actually build JSON's demo system, that order DB data source, and building those, importing those order records, or referencing, not even importing those order records. So that's at bit.ly/lightning-connect-tutorial. And we'll publish all of these slides, so you don't have to scribble down the URL. These slides will go out on the developer website. We have the community group. I see there's been quite a few questions there already. You found that. Jason and I both frequent the official Lightning Connect success group, and an increasing number of customers as well. So it's a great place to interact with the community there. I hope a whole bunch of you on the call have already used Trailhead. Trailhead is our interactive learning path for Salesforce. We've been building this out with different modules. We already have a whole bunch related to Lightning, so Lightning Process Builder, Lightning Components, and we have a Lightning Connect module that should be coming to Trailhead in the next month or two. So you'll be able to follow a guided tutorial and actually build a Lightning Connect integration and have it verified by the Trailhead system. Great way to learn Salesforce. I advise everybody on the call should be using Trailhead to consolidate existing knowledge and learn new topics as well. So all of this series, this is the final webinar in a series of 4 relating to the Lightning technologies. These are all available on the developer website. The recordings for the previous 3 are there, and the recording for this one will be there in a few days. The URL's there at the bottom of the page, but I think you can just go to developer.salesforce.com, and there should be a link there to click through to the Lightning webinar series. So they'll be archived there for your viewing pleasure. So with that, let's look at the questions that have been coming in and see what people have been asking. So let's scroll down. So okay, so Ruben Smith asks, I think I've actually met Ruben. He looks familiar chap. Our company's in the process of implementing NetSuite ERP. Will you be able to connect to that via Lightning Connect, Jason?
Yes, we have a couple customers trying it, and if you want to experiment on it, actually you would be able to get a middleware solution, right? Because I know that for some customers, they just want to test out whether Lightning Connect can solve their problem. They might not want to go into the details on setting up their own data interface on their side. That's why we have the partners, right? With the integration partners like Informatica or Jitterbit will be able to allow you to quickly, literally account in half an hour, request a trial account, establish the connectivity to your data sources, and republishing the data as OData feed so that you can set up the Lightning Connect to consume the data. So that's one easy way to do it. Then once you have some mileage out of it, you feel comfortable that Lightning Connect will be able to be a great solution for your business problem, then you can invest more time to construct or building out your own OData services for NetSuite.
Awesome. Okay, a question from Jan van der Velde. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Looks like it's Dutch, I guess. We showed in the segment on the OData protocol the ability to update data, but Jan thought it was read-only. So the answer there is that yes, the Lightning Connect feature right now is read-only, but the potential is there, obviously, in the protocol to do read-write, and that is on the roadmap. We covered that.
Yeah, actually, the writable capability is in a pilot program. If you are interested in participate, just send us a note. We can include you in the pilot so they can try out the writable capability as well. We're planning to release that feature in the later part of this year so that you will be able to do the full CRUD support on your data.
Okay, and I guess people can just mention you in the success group with a request to get on
Absolutely,
the pilot.
yes.
Excellent. Okay, so Christoph Gossen asks, are there any plans for getting standard custom objects accessible via OData, i.e. Salesforce acting as an OData producer, being the other end of the conversation? I hear this question a lot from developers. They have integrations in mind where we are the data source and they have an OData consumer that they want to connect to us with.
That's a great question. If you want to accessing data, that's one of the reasons why we also providing this new capability for COSOL. Right? If you want to accessing data, Salesforce data from a different Salesforce org, you can using our new COSOL connector offering. But for the developers or customer want to access Salesforce data from external places using the OData interface, and that's one of the product features that we're working on to provide a OData interface for Salesforce data. That's something that will enable Salesforce to become the producer of OData, and is a feature that we're planning to roll out towards the end of this year as well, so that will allow our customers or mobile devices to be able to consume more data. So that's in our roadmap, and then I will be able to come back to the audience for more detailed plan.
Okay, so it's kind of out there. Oh, here's an interesting one. How far backwards compatible is Lightning Connect? My clients have many older databases that I would need to connect to such backends. I guess the answer there is if you've got an older product that predates OData, then you're really going to have to be thinking about one of our partner products.
Correct. Yes. Instead of like there's two options. One is that you can build your own data services to translate. Well, think about it, make a JDBC or ODBC connection to your data. Your older or legacy data sources could be DB in the pre-2003. Grabbing the data, do the translation, and publishing as OData feed. That's one option. The other option, exactly like what Pat was describing, is you can use one of our partner solutions because they probably already have a lot of pre-built connectors to those older database systems. So you can using those middleware to be able to connect to your data source and republish in a OData format. So those are the two options one can consider.
And I guess there's another question kind of related in that when we support OData version 4, will we keep around the version 2 support as well?
We will. We will have both OData 2.0 and 4.0 as the connectors on our offering, so that you will be able to, if you build something today with OData 2.0, we'll continue to support it. But if you're building something new, then probably you want to stay with OData 4.0 because it gives you a bit more product features.
Right, you get that the ability with it's 4.0 that supports that notification feature.
Exactly.
Another and a good question actually from Lee Sauer here. Kind of thinking ahead here. What happens when the external database structure changes if I add or remove a column from that data source?
So great question, right? Because we as developers we make a lot of we're really busy in updating our data from time to time. So remember I was clicking this validate and sync button earlier during the setups. That's exactly what you can do to update your external object representation. So for example, your external schema change, adding a couple columns or maybe removing it. One way you can do it is you do this validate and sync operation again. So we will be refreshing the external objects data structures on our side. That's one way you can do it. For some of you, if you remember, I was editing the metadata, the fields, doing the lookup creation. So that means that you can also make some modifications to that metadata, right, manually. In that, you would be able to create, let's say you're adding a column on your external data, but you don't want to do a complete validate and sync. You can manually adding that field or that column on the external objects definition, so that you can change the field type, right, from numeric to text or from string, something like that.
And this being Salesforce, say if I reference a field from some Apex or Visualforce, and then I go try and remove that in the external object, it's going to tell me which pages I need to go and update.
Correct.
And what I need to go change. So it's not going to let me just pull the rug out from under my Visualforce pages. So let's go through here for some more questions. Okay, how do you get access to Lightning Connect? So we know it's available by default in Developer Edition. How do I get Lightning Connect if I want to put it into production?
So Lightning Connect for commercial usage, you require an add-on license. But if you want to kick the tire testing it, you can also have request a trial license or courtesy trial license to be provisioned into your production app. All you need to do is contact your Salesforce account executive so that they can submit a request to provision a trial license for you. Then you can propagate that to your sandboxes for testing purposes. It's a time-limited $0 courtesy license you can use for testing.
Okay. So you can use it from your sandbox and try it out, maybe do a hookup to your internal data. Okay, how do we use Lightning Connect in Visualforce pages, and can we use integrated data with Visualforce chart components? So I can certainly answer the first part of this, is that you just reference the external object just as if it was a custom object. You can use a custom controller, you can use a standard controller, you can just pull back data. The only difference really is, I guess, on the identifier. It's going to be an external ID rather than the traditional 15 or 18 character Salesforce identifier. Visualforce chart components, I haven't tried them. I can't see any reason they wouldn't work because it's just pulling the data through the same pathway.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well.
Okay, so does Lightning Connect use API calls? Now, this is a question I've heard a lot. The way to think about this is that the platform is actually calling out to the data source. So we're not consuming API calls as you might understand them as you would if you were accessing Salesforce from an app using the REST or SOAP API. But there is an allowance of calls over Lightning Connect, right? There's Lightning Connect can call your external data source, and that's a separate separate allowance.
Yeah, that's a separate allowance. We exactly like Pat, you're saying, we are not making those typical API calls, right? Because Lightning Connect's data is not locally in Salesforce. We're actually making outbound web services calls over the internet to reach the external system to fetch the data. So that means that we are not contributing any of the consumption of the APIs on the Salesforce side, but we'll be making a lot of the outbound web services. Think about those just like Apex callouts, right? The web service calls. We do have a different quota for that. But that's more like for service protections. In general, we don't. I think the initial number we set up about 10,000 an hour for the outbound transactions. But those can be really easily removed because that's a safety mechanism to make sure that we are not shooting ourselves in the foot. So, for proper usage, that limit can be lifted.
Right. So yeah, if you have a bug in your Apex and you're hammering it, you're gonna get an exception after 10,000 accesses in an hour. But if you really need like more than 3 a second, you can talk to Jason and we can move that limit up. Does external data show up in global search? So great question. Can I just type in the search box at the top of the page and find that data?
Yeah, we support global search or federated search because what happens is when you're typing in the search term, we're going to push out the search term to both the internal objects and external systems. And I think one of the way that we implement it, we're making all the search happening asynchronously, so that we won't be blocking the other searches happening. Right? You could be setting up 3 or 4 external objects pointing to different systems. When you're typing in the search terms, we'll push the search into all these external systems. The external system will be responsible for executing the search and coming back with results. Since the operation is happening asynchronously, that means that some result coming back faster than the other one, but there will not be any blockings from a display perspective.
All right. Let me see. What happens when you add or change a record from Salesforce and it conflicts with a back-end trigger? Yeah, I'm not sure where that question's going. Maybe I'll engage with Lee on the success group. Right now, there's kind of I'm not sure what that question is. Adding a or changing a record from Salesforce and it conflicts with the back-end trigger. Maybe that's the linking of the data across there. Maybe if I add or change a record in Salesforce and the link isn't there on one of those indirect lookup fields. I don't know. I'll engage on the success community there and get some more information on that question. Okay, so got time for maybe one or two more questions here. So is the Lightning connector intended for mobile apps or desktop applications?
It's for both, because as I indicated earlier, whatever you set up on the desktop side will automatically available on the mobile devices. You can access the data from Salesforce1 mobile app without any of the need to do additional setups or coding efforts on the mobile side.
Okay, and so let me see. Okay, so final question. I guess we'll have to talk about the money. Is there an additional cost associated with Lightning Connect?
Yeah, for commercial usage, Lightning Connect require a add-on license. There's a fee with it, but if you're using it for development purposes in development, there's free of charge.
Okay, so we can use it in our developer edition, and I believe it's a single external data source in the developer edition, and then it's an add-on license for production. Okay, so thank you very much, Jason, for explaining Lightning Connect, and I believe we're back at the top of the hour. So with that, I'd like to thank you, the audience, for calling in and providing those great questions. And yeah, we'll follow up on the success community.